to infinity and beyond!
So there's a lot of people saying that the Toy Story series should have ended after the third film. And I'm gonna be completely honest, I was one of those people. For my generation, Toy Story 3 felt like a perfect goodbye. We grew up with Andy, we watched him go from a kid playing with toys to someone going off to college, and the ending felt like it was speaking directly to us. And it was extremely emotional because it felt like our childhood was being packed up along with Woody and Buzz. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like saying this series should have ended with Toy Story 3, it feels kind of selfish. Because Toy Story was never just ours. This is a concept that can last generations. It can be used to tell so many different important lessons to growing up, change, friendship, identity, purpose, and what it means to matter to someone. And the original trilogy may have been the version we grew up with, but that doesn't mean the story has to stop with us. And that is what I really appreciate about Toy Story 5. This movie understands that the Toy Story series can evolve. It can speak to this new generation of kids, with still connecting with the older audience that grew up with these characters. And we are now at the point where the people who grew up with these characters as a kid are now bringing their own kids to the theater to experience it together. And that's what makes this franchise so special. It's continuing that legacy of being something that parents and kids can still enjoy. And what I really like about Toy Story 5 is what the story decides to tackle in this one. This movie focuses heavily on technology and the role it plays in modern day children's lives. It looks at the impact of having technology in your kid's life, but also the impact of trying to completely remove it. Instead of making it feel like a simple technology is bad message, the movie actually gives the topic more balance than I expected. It touches on big ideas like cyberbullying, imposter syndrome, feeling replaced, and the fear that something new or different automatically means something worse. And one of the strongest parts of this movie is it shows that just because something is different doesn't mean that it has bad intentions. Like these new toys that are tech-based still want the same thing for the children just as the older toys. They can still want connection and still want that purpose, and it fits perfectly into what Toy Story has always been about. Because at its core, this series is about toys trying to find their place in a child's life and making an impact on that child's life in the small window that it has to do so. And in Toy Story 5, this is challenged in a very modern way. And while we had all this being the main focus of the movie, we had a lot of cool subplots happening in the background as well, and it made the pacing of this movie feel very consistent, while also having some amazing comedic beats in it. And I gotta say, some of the humor in this movie is the best I've seen in the entire series. I also really like the storytime devices that they used during the playtime sequences. It made it feel creative, fun, and very nostalgic, which is a reminder of why this series works so well. Because when Toy Story is at its best, it makes you remember how it felt to be a kid. Back when you had no responsibilities and every day was a new adventure that you were looking forward to. Because I don't know about you, but having this escape in this movie, it felt refreshing. Another thing I appreciate about this movie is that it closed off threads that were introduced even back in the earlier films. And it has a very satisfying end to one of the saddest sequences that we've ever seen in Toy Story history. And I'll let you guess what sequence I'm referring to. But with that being said, there are a few issues I had with the film. One of the biggest things that stood out to me right away was the animation of the humans looks a little bit off. And at first I thought it was because certain characters were aging and just looked different from the previous films. But no, across the board, all the humans have this weird kind of shine to them now. But it wasn't anything that ruined the movie for me, and I was able to get used to it as the film went on. But it was noticeable enough for me to take a second to have to adjust. And there are a few character choices that kind of come out of nowhere, and some decisions that don't fully make sense and are really there just to push the narrative forward. But I wouldn't say that ruined the movie, but there were moments where I noticed that the writing was forcing something to happen instead of having it naturally happen and make sense. But at the same time, this is a kid's movie. And I do not mean to say that as an excuse for weak writing. I just mean it in a way that the emotional experience, the message, and the humor, and the adventure are clearly the priority here. And for me, those things work to where the weaker moments didn't take me out of the movie. Because of all these things taken in consideration, I absolutely loved Toy Story 5. I think this movie is absolutely worth a watch, and I think it's one that you should bring your family to experience. Whether they're older or younger, everybody's gonna have a good time. The animation, the storytelling, the characters, and the emotional core of it all, it still feels connected to what made that first movie so special. And more important, this movie proves that the Toy Story series doesn't need to end just because one generation felt like they got their perfect goodbye. As long as Pixar can keep thinking of cool and interesting stories to tell with these characters, and impactful messages to interweave with the story they're telling, I think the Toy Story franchise is not going to stop anytime soon, and it's just going to continue to get better and better. Because at the end of the day, Toy Story is not just about the toys. It is about growing up, and every generation has to do that. But I want to know your guys' thoughts. If you saw Toy Story 5 this weekend, what did you think of the movie? Do you think this is a franchise that can continue on till the end of time? Or do you think I'm completely wrong and it should have ended with the original trilogy? Let me know in the comments below and let's talk about it. But before you do that, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I do review and analysis videos on shows and movies every single week, so make sure you're subscribing so you don't miss out on that. My last video was actually reaction to the new Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer. So if you like Marvel and you want to see that, make sure to check this video out. But that is going to be it for me today, you guys. My name is Ben James. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!